We're the Grumpy Dungeon Masters. I'm Grumpy Dungeon Master Jay. We're joined by Grumpy Dungeon Master Chris and
Gopher.
and Christian and Dan.
Gopher.
Heyo.
Hi
Sure,
guys.
man.
Yeah, I was given a very low energy introduction since I'm usually the hype man.
Well,
Woo!
I'm not the hype man today, so yeah, you gotta tap me
Flair
out
has
there.
joined us. Jeez.
So Ric Flair has joined the channel.
We don't talk about Ric Flair anymore, guys.
Thank goodness.
You can't see this, but I'm holding up 4 fingers right now.
Yeah, I was about to get Flair chopped.
I don't know what any of that is.
Learn to watch pro wrestling.
I do. I have my favorite pro wrestlers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure you've seen somebody get Flair chopped. It's a classic.
Oh yeah.
I actually saw something where Mark Henry basically invented a move, and then everyone started copying that move.
He in fact did, yes, where he rolls through with the body slam.
Yep. And everyone started doing it, but no one calls it the Mark Henry roll up.
Yeah, it should be.
But it should be, and it made him cry, and it made me sad.
Mark Henry is a fucking national treasure for anyone who doesn't know who he is. Anyway, but we talk about Dungeons and Dragons and not necessarily pro wrestling on here.
I mean,
Not
listen,
necessarily.
the squared circle does translate well to Dungeons and Dragons. Let's be honest. There's a lot of storylines that are just as lame in Dungeons and Dragons as there are in pro wrestling.
So back in the 90s, I knew these kids who did online pro wrestling. Where they would, you basically just everybody communicates together, and you create your wrestlers, and then you have matches, and I'm saying that with quotations.
Oh, so you had an online mud of wrestling.
Yes, aka tabletop role-playing game, the wrestling game.
Yeah, but they would never admit it was a tabletop role-playing game, at least not back then. I mean, pro wrestlers are not too cool for school these days, but back then people who followed wrestling were definitely not into Dungeons and Dragons, or at least they wouldn't admit that they were into it.
I don't know, because
it's the same sort of thing with like people who played fantasy football, fantasy baseball.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, come on, guys, you guys are just playing D&D right here, except with real name players and what they may or may not do next week.
Yep, it's very, very similar in all regards.
Was a pro wrestling RPG that came out a long time ago.
Oh, there's a WWF RPG if you go looking for it.
Yeah, but the one I'm talking about is called Worldwide Wrestling RPG.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember watching someone talk about it, and they talked about how it had like the champion system, where basically like you with your wrestler, the more matches you win, the more hype you get with the crowd, and that's how it affects your stats. So you get.
There was another game that did that, like it might have been fucking Dark Sun that actually had like for gladiators or something like that, a stat for gladiators, like
probably an expansion book.
Yeah, I recall that vividly from the 90s. It was something like. It was similar. It was like a similar stat that didn't really do much, but it was kind of like honor in like in a Oriental Adventures game or something like that. But like the more you win, the more impressive you are to the crowd. I think there was also a supplemental book for Pathfinder that did that too. Anyway,
I could believe it. I know Street Fighter, the role playing game, which was also released by White Wolf. I own a copy of it. It actually has like a win loss record, and it is designed so you can actually have fights, like one-on-one Street Fighter battles.
I mean, that sounds like Double Dragon to me.
I put the link to the wrestling RPG in the chat, and you can actually look at their PDF sheets for the characters. And the 4 major stats is body, look, real, and work. And work I think is the stat that I was talking about, where the more you work up the crowd, yeah. You get that, you get an audience score, and that gives you advantages that you can use to fight the players better. It's honestly, it may be a little complicated, maybe a little weird. It's definitely not D&D, but like that's a really cool concept, where you can bank these advantages and then use them later.
I'd run it. I'd play it. But
I
then
play
again,
one shot of it.
yeah, I love pro wrestling, so it's right up my alley.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, so like every time you increase your audience score, you gain momentum, and each momentum piece it sounds like a lot of math crunching, which is kind of always what old systems were. But
Yeah, a lot of them. Yeah, I'm
yeah,
just sort of looking through. There are 15 different archetypes you could play, 12 different promotions, 2 sets of 8 basic moves, like cut a promo and break kayfabe. You don't break kayfabe. Don't.
That's yeah. You can go down a helicopter crash and not break kayfabe.
Yep.
God.
So in D&D news, the video came out for the new loot creation rules. Did we all watch?
Yeah, I
In
did.
magic items?
Yeah,
I did.
Magical
I forgot
items?
most of it though. But yeah, I watched it.
I did watch it.
I didn't watch it because I never do, and I always wait for you guys to talk about it, and then I respond.
Well, you know what? I'm grumpy about it.
Oh no.
Well, welcome to the podcast.
I am,
So
I'm
give us
not
a
thrilled
recap
with
of
it.
what happened.
Okay, so the latest video, or I don't know if it was the latest video, but a recent video they came out with the one about where they talk about all the magic items and they talk about in loot in general, I guess. They had a minute where they talked about, we used a new category of loot called trade bars, just heavier gold pieces.
Neat.
But
That seems
Here,
pointless.
gems and platinum pieces already existed.
Yeah.
yeah, well, they were there in 3.5, and they just now bring them into 5th-ish, 5R or whatever.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, but they talk about, okay, yeah, they have a lot of magic items. They did more illustrations, which I think that part is great. I'm happy to see more artwork of magic items because it always sucks when you have a magic item and have no idea what it looks like, and you have to go find your own art. I love artwork with magic items. I think that can help sell a magic item.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
part of the reason I still subscribe after 3 years to Griffin's Saddlebag, because
Same.
even if like his magic item isn't what I want to release as my personal take on a given magic item, I can still use his art because he has so much stuff already drawn, and they're
The
just
art is great.
beautifully
sometimes-
rendered watercolors, beautifully rendered.
Yeah,
Every
I
single
sometimes the art from that just inspires me to create something based on
Yeah.
that art that's different than what he did. But
I know they mentioned it a few times about the potion of invisibility being an empty potion bottle.
I love it. I think it's great. just like in the old edition monster manual where they had the invisible stalker and it was just a blank.
A
It was just a blank
page.
picture. It was great.
Yeah, he was in charge of this one. I should have just the artist's signature. Like
There's
you're turning this in.
I love that it's just a potion bottle with nothing in it.
There's actually a
Mhm.
picture too in the new player's handbook that basically is the characters from the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon show adventuring into a mine, and they list all the characters out because they're all in the photo. But when you count the characters out, they're missing one. But yet the tagline read everybody, and the one that they're missing is Stella because she's invisible.
Yeah.
You can't see
Yeah.
her.
I like that.
Yeah.
That's good.
So they go into detail about there's more magic items, there's new stuff in there wasn't. They've changed things that are there. They've added more art, and they have rules for crafting these new magical items, so that you can craft potentially any non-artifact magic item that is in the Dungeon Master's Guide. You can't craft artifacts. That's just beyond what players can do. Thank God.
But
That comes
like
in the epic. That'll be in the epic handbook.
But like whenever
Yeah.
I've had a player craft a magic item, it's always been artifact level.
Really?
You could buy everything else, or find everything else. But if you want something unique and specific to you, it's going to be artifact level, and you got to make it. Like I gave one of my players right now a mimic greatsword, and he's got to, fuck around with it until he basically levels it up from stage 1 to stage 2. It's going to be
Yeah,
an
but
artifact level
he
weapon.
didn't make that.
No, but by making that, I'm giving you the base, and you have to build that up from there. And we're going to work on this together for us to build up into what this item is. I did it before in 4th edition where I gave a player because the Minotaurs in 4th edition could eat the hearts of their enemies, and gain abilities from them. He was playing a Minotaur, and I didn't want to give him that ability straight up because he was basically a lawful good Minotaur. So he had a clan totem weapon that he wanted to use, and it's like, okay, well, if you put a heart into that item, it's going to inherit some of those abilities, and you transfer it that way. So instead of like doing the lawful evil thing or the evil thing of eating somebody's heart, he was collecting hearts and adding them to his totem. So like, I've always made items, but they were always artifact level. I never had someone like, can I make boots of flying? I guess.
Yeah, see, I don't mind that as much. Like, you're working with the player there, and you're involved in the process, so you can steer clear of places you don't want to go, and you can say no if they try to overstep or build something that's overpowered. Anytime you build rules for you can do this, then that option is on the table, and in a kind of rules authoritative game like what D&D has become.
Yeah.
Once you say these rules are enabled, it then is, at a lot of tables, not mine or Dan's or Jay's, but a lot of tables, it becomes more difficult, or at least feels more difficult for the DM to just say no.
Yeah.
So they do say you can't build artifacts, and that's great, but they basically say anything that is in the DMG, it gives you the rules to craft it, and the only kind of restriction is, do you know the spells? Do you have proficiency of the right tools? And do you have enough gold?
Yeah. See, I don't like that. I love crafting magic items. I absolutely love it. I want to play characters that do it all the time. But if it's as simple as I just need proficiency in the tool, I need these spells, and I need the money and time, that's not really crafting magic items. Crafting magic items, if I'm going to make boots of flying, then I need the feather of a phoenix, which means I have to go and find a feather of a phoenix somehow.
Thank you. That you're on the same page with me. That is what I'm grumpy about, is that it doesn't include things like that. When you used to, in the old, like, 1st edition, 2nd edition D&D, if you wanted to make a magic item, it meant you were going on an adventure because you needed special components and materials. You couldn't just throw gold at the problem and use a woodcarver's tools and be like, cool, I had 2 months off from adventuring. I have 50,000 gold, so I can just make this thing. You had to go find that feather of a phoenix or a griffin's feather or a dragon's scales, something that you needed that made you go on an adventure. It made creating magic items became a reason to adventure out in the world and go do things, and that is gone here, at least from what they've revealed so far.
So that reminds me, I was looking through the Level Up 5e monster book, okay, and one of the things that it was either the Level Up 5e monster book or is the Book of Fiends that I have, and both books list components and items that like you can get and gather from monsters, like listed in there.
That's the Level Up 5e.
Yes.
Right, but what I'm about to say is it may be Level 5 or maybe the Book of Fiends, because the Book of Fiends that I have, which I don't think I've ever talked about it, but it's a separate third-party publisher, GRR, that put out a book of just Fiends. It was really cool. I really liked it. I was running the Fiendish summer for Waterdeep, and I was like, okay, well, I gotta bring in more Fiends. But one of the books, and it may be a Level Up 5e, said that if you fight a chain demon, a chain devil, sorry, and you loot its bindings, its chain bindings, that a player can basically, that's the main component in making the iron bands of binding. And so when I sent the players off to basically go raid the evil lair of everybody, the guy said, hey, if you run across a chain devil, bring me back some of its chain so I can make you an item. And actually did that. They actually fought the chain demon because I knew it was going to be there. I put it there, and I was able to make the bindings off of that. And like, if that was the system that they were going to come up with, I'd be perfectly fine with that. Like, here's a list of all these cool magic items with all these cool items that are needed from it. And if you run across them on your adventure, then make sure to harvest it, roll your survival check to get a good point of it. And that's how Shadowmoor and Calanthea work for us.
That must be the other book. I'm looking at the 5e Chain Devil and it doesn't say anything about that. So
okay, yeah. So, but like I said, that's really cool. And if that's not what's in their thing, then I'm really disappointed. That's like a major misstep.
I agree. I think that is a major, especially when there are already out in the wild third-party groups. I'm looking at there's a Patreon group called Loot Tavern specifically, and I know a couple other groups are working on it. Dungeon Dudes have mentioned it specifically, and I know there's other rule sets out there, but there are third-party rule sets that for crafting that involve doing just that. It is I fight some sort of creature or I find out about some sort of creature, and you can use these creatures to create magical items based on the things that you harvest for them, and you make checks to see what you can get for them, and then you figure out what you can make with them. And it makes, hey, if I want to make a magical item, like I have to go on an adventure. I have to find the right creature or the right material. Like I have to find, a golden apple that is on top of a mountain that only blooms in this time of year. It makes it part of the world. It builds the lore of the world and gives you reason to adventure rather than just it's cool. We robbed a rich dude that had a bunch of gold and now I can make a magic wand.
So I know Christian played a lot of Pathfinder and Pathfinder 1E, and I don't want D&D 5e to become a, hey guys, we got money, and so now we're in town, so let's just go to the magic item shop and buy magical items. So everyone's got their Wand of the War Mage +3, they've got their Ring of Protection, they've got their whatever magical item that is appropriate for the character. Obviously, you only have 3 bound magic items, but you can buy a bunch of +1 or +2, +3 weapons or whatever. I don't, I don't know. That's not a game that I want to play. But they're kind of putting rules out there to kind of re-implement this 3-5 Pathfinder mentality of, oh, you've got money, therefore you can translate that money into items. But on the flip side of that, while I enjoy the let's go on a quest to build a magic item, I'm not the type of DM to want to run a game that's just about building magic items because what's going to happen is that the wizard's going to be like, guys, if we can go on this quest, I can make this sweet magic item that's going to do X, Y, and Z. And you're going to go on that sweet quest for that wizard. And then I'm going to be like, okay, I know, and now I'm going to get back to the main story. And the fighter's be like, you know what? I want to go on a quest to make a fucking flaming greatsword. And then you got to write a quest to make the flaming greatsword. And then you end up being the rogues be like, well, I want to have like a dagger of venom, and I want to figure out how to do that. And then it just becomes players getting jealous that the other players got to have what appears to be personal attention for their quest lines.
Yeah.
And then
I
you
think
you basically find yourself just running a game of really it's magic item shopping, but you're beating up monsters along the way, which is also not the game I want to run.
Sure, it becomes kind of a like if you do it too the wrong way, it becomes very like that Monster Hunter video game series where you're just running out. But I think you can do it in a way of like, hey, you find a rumor that it's not just you need any griffin, but there is a particular golden griffin that lives in this place. And it said its feathers have some sort of thing. You don't tell them like it creates this magic item or does this. You just put a rumor out there, and if it's something your group is interested in, maybe they go after it. Maybe they harvest a feather, and then maybe they figure out what can I do with this. Like maybe they have to go talk to a wizard somewhere that can tell them, oh, I can do this, or there's an alchemist in a city far away. If you make it all part of the world and part of the adventure, it can build it up. Yeah, you don't want to make it this common thing of like just everything out in the world is a thing to go harvest and get stuff for, and you're just
I mean,
you're
if you want to play
making
Monster Hunter the tabletop, I guess that's a thing. But yeah, I prefer kind of like what Waples is talking about, like where it's just like, oh, if by the way you end up happening upon a chain devil and you grab his chains, it can make this magical item. That's kind of cool,
yeah,
or even like if you're the DM and you're running the game, and you're like, you know what? I read somewhere that a chain devil actually would do this. Hey, wizard, make an Arcana check. Priest, make a religion check. If they both make a 15 or 20 or whatever, you're like, oh yeah, by the way, you think that this is somehow related to making this magic item that you heard about once upon a time. So maybe you guys could try to take it back to the city, talk to a lore master of some sort, go do some research in the library, figure out how to do it. That seems fine. That's more like natural. Just like, but yeah, I just wanted. I don't want to have magic item shops just fully equipped with bullshit, or you know, being more beneficial for a wizard just to make magical items than to go adventuring. I don't want that either. And I also don't, which is part of the I fucking hate artificers. Can I just say that fucking artificers are stupid? I wish they weren't in D&D 5e, and I'm happy that none of them are in my game. In fact, they didn't allow them in my game. So, I don't want guns in my game, and I don't want fucking artificers. Fuck off.
Sounds similar to me.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like D&D when they're there.
I loved artificers in 3rd. I have no use for them in 5th because they're not actually artificers.
I played in a Spelljammer game, and it felt okay that there were artificers in that. That made a little sense because it was future tech involved. But man, just a regular old D&D game, it just feels weird.
Yeah, I don't want to get too off
I think they make sense in like Eberron, where they were originally designed for. Like they were a class designed for that world that somebody created, where it was supposed to be, instead of steampunk, it was magic punk. Magic replaces technology, and these are the guys that make it happen.
So when it comes to Faerun, and I don't want to get too off track about fucking Artificer, we'll continue talking about them for sure. But like how they handled it in Baldur's Gate 3 was really good, I thought. Because you can't play an Artificer, you can't be an Artificer, but that guy's an Artificer. Oh shit, and he has Artificer abilities. I like when Artificers are like there's like one dude that's like kind of like a crazy wizard, but he's smart. Too smart for his own good, and he's got like the magic crossbow that explodes and shit like that. I don't mind it, but you can't have them all running around as players and shit. It just
it's fine for an NPC, like a unique guy that is a weird off the beaten path wizard or whatever, like just a unique NPC or a small group of NPCs or something. That's cool. But yeah, for players, it makes it weird, unless your game is designed around it. So here's the thing in the video that also worried me, because they mentioned that if a player buys the DMG, and I guess this is to encourage sales in my like corporate paranoia, then they can view all the list of magic items as a catalog, an aspirational catalog. They can go, oh, well, I would like that kind of magic item, so I need to figure out what skills it takes to build it, and I can build my character to get those skills and get that money, and then I can choose the magic items I want from my shopping catalog, the DMG.
What metagaming corporate fucking WotC Hasbro bullshit? Jesus Christ!
Yes,
come on.
I did look up the video. I was looking on the Reddit article of it. They did mention that the monster manual, when it comes out, will have a list of items that monsters can drop that can then be used in the table to make magic items.
I don't hate it.
That feels real MMO.
Yeah.
I want to see more about it.
Yeah, I don't hate it without seeing it, but yeah, it feels very MMO.
Needs more details, but I like the idea of, hey, if it's like limited to certain creatures like dragons and beholders and big stuff that is a meaningful encounter, okay. If it's like every single thing you fight has some sort of use you can do it, then we've gone too far.
Much.
I don't want everybody to be like a 17th, 18th century fur trader or something in North America that's just harvesting every part of a moose and then selling it to everybody. I mean, I don't want my PCs to be like, okay, Dan, I'm going to make 5 survival checks. First, I'm going to take its horns. Then I'm going to take its hooves. Then I'm going to grind those hooves down, and I'm going to use that powder to make a potion of animal control. And then I'm going to use this thing. I don't want to deal with that. Like, I got enough shit to deal with in my game. I don't want to. It's like merchant magic should happen every couple of games, and that's it.
This is what annoys me, is that they mentioned that like, oh, like you don't have to rely on the DM to drop magic items for you. You can just make your own. You just look at this list and you make your rolls, and you get to create your own stuff. No DM approval needed.
No. I do recall them saying in the video that you work with your DM to make magic items. I do remember them saying that.
Yeah, but
Yeah, that's why the rules are in the DMG, because these item rules, I guess, are their optional rules, so you don't have to allow them because it's not in the player's handbook. You can just say, no, that's not the way magic item crafting works here.
Yeah, for any dungeon master who's out there listening to this who doesn't know this, you can just say no.
That is a very important lesson. You can just say no.
Yeah, you are expected to say
no matter
no.
how much a PC's like, but my entire character concept is based around this. Get a new character concept if your whole character concept is making a sweet magic item.
I wish
oh my God.
they would have that in the DMG, like right at the beginning of the same thing you find in like other more old school feeling games where they tell you rulings over rules. The first rule is that the GM makes the rules.
So
Yeah.
when I was playing in the one game I got to play with Panda, I wanted to basically be a gunslinger because I hadn't played that yet. I always thought it was interesting. I wanted to give it a try. And he goes, I don't know if that will work in my setting. Guns exist, but it's only in like this small region in the upper north left area of the map. And the only way you could get there is if you were noble and if your dad had a lot of influence. And I was like, well, the story is us. We're rescuing the daughter of the king, right? So why can't I be like the estranged brother of of that sister of the king? And I got exiled over there and lived my life as a noble over there, and I know guns, and and the little thing. And then I heard my sister got kidnapped, so I came back to do it. He's like, I really like that, and went with it. That was me working with the DM. He could shut me down at any time and say no, and I would have been okay.
Also, you shouldn't play a gunslinger in D&D.
I wanted to try.
No.
Yeah, you did, but it's dumb.
Yeah,
it was dumb, and because I was the DPS slot in his group, essentially, I didn't have counterspell, and we really needed counterspell. That was the range DPS of the group, and we really needed counterspell.
Well,
it hurt us.
I saw a lot of people mention that they were sad that the Artificer didn't make it in the PHP, and I am not among them. I am happy that it's not there, and I hope it never makes it into 5R outside of an Eberron sourcebook.
My wife played an Artificer, but we worked to make it happen, and it took a lot of creativity. I mean, it was easy because it's my wife and she's right here. We could chat back and forth and make it easy, And I still would have done that with any of my players if they wanted to make an Artificer. It was just like we had to come up with a scenario where it would work and make sense, And for her, it was our owl campaign, and her owl just didn't have wings when she was born, So she made her own wings and used magic to infuse them, and
they were really twink wings, and it came with a gun as well, and also a cannon. So.
Yeah, so her wings were made of twigs and shit, and they did launch stuff. But it worked
she's Archangel.
Yeah,
it takes all of like about 3 sessions for a Artificer's backstory of like I was handicapped and had to make like a robo chair for Fantasy Land in order to be on par with everybody else. I create bombs and guns. It really doesn't take long.
I've seen it work once well in a game I played in for a little bit where the guy he was like, this is my concept and I'm going to theme everything around it, is that he was a dwarf runesmith. And he themed everything as he would not create anything that was firearms. The DM would not allow firearms, so he couldn't use any of them. So he used regular weapons, and everything he chose was around like, he would theme it as, instead of creating a weird invention, it was like, I'm inscribing runes on my axe that allow it to call lightning, or I'm inscribing runes on my armor for protection.
Yeah,
and it was just he picked
that much thought into it.
He had to be careful when he worked with the DM to pick only the things that kind of mimicked things that made sense for like magic, and he would just play it as a runesmith, and he was mostly a like kind of a gish. He was an armored semi spell user kind of guy.
And that's what my wife did with her owlin with the fake wings, And by the way, even though she was an artificer with fake cool magic wings and got the fire missiles out of them or whatever,
All right, Farah.
It still doesn't save you from a disintegrate.
You lost me at fired
Fair.
missiles out of the wings.
Yeah, my stick-based wings also fires fucking missiles.
They're
Well,
little
you
pine
flap
going
the,
pop, pop, pop,
yeah,
pop.
yeah, you
I
flap
mean,
the
it's
wings.
only the
it throws
equivalent of a
pine
bunch
cone.
of scorching rays, though, but it's missiles. Yeah, artificers suck. Hate them. We'll never play one.
Yep.
Yeah, on the topic,
they have their place in certain games, and that's it.
on the
Will not
topic
allow
of
them in my next game.
on the topic of saying no, my long-term campaign I've been running for years. There are no orcs. There are no dark elves. There are no guns. Those things just don't exist. And my players all know that, and they all know that you can't play any of these things. I have one player who has always wanted to play a dark elf, and he still has not been able to.
Yeah, on my last game, I said no. There were no orcs. Orcs didn't exist in the world. There were no halflings or gnomes, or at least halflings and gnomes existed, but they all went off with the elves into fairyland, and so you could not play them because they left the world.
When we were playing through Solasta, and I started my character that was a tiefling, it said at the opening thing that tieflings are rare and whatnot, but in the source book, they don't exist. They're like there are no tieflings in that setting, and so it felt kind of weird to play through the entire game as a tiefling and then be like, "Shit, we don't exist."
I mean, you
Look,
kept calling me a Duergar, even though there are no Duergars in there.
I love tieflings, but I think they belong in Planescape and not in the PHB.
Yeah,
But they're
I don't.
sexy and everybody likes them.
Yeah, they were super popular. They when Planescape came out, tieflings and Azamar were the
every edgelord ever wanted to play them because they were Devilborn or something.
Yeah,
Like
they were, and I get it. They were cool. The art from Tony DiTerluzzi does some freaking fantastic art, so the art for them was amazing. And yeah, I get that you want to play it. But
I don't mind how they are now in like the current lore setup, where like in the fourth Faerun setting, they were like, you exist, but like, we treat you kind of like we treat Drow. Like, we're really cautious around you. You're gonna kill us. And it wasn't until like the Elturel thing happened and all those tieflings got, trapped in Avernus and barely escaped out, and then Baldur's Gate 3 did they kind of like were able to kind of like meld that back to like, yeah, they're kind of like a survivor race. There's so few of them nowadays.
here's sort of the problem with making them as common as that, though, because while it might work for Faerun, people are also going to think that, oh, I just want to play a tiefling in Dragonlance, or I want to play a tiefling in Eberron, and there are no tieflings in Dragonlance. That doesn't exist.
I mean, it's one of those things that at the beginning of a game, the DM sits down and sets the rules and says, these are the books you can use. These are the races you can play, or species you can play. These are the backgrounds that are available. I made X number of new backgrounds or whatever. That's what you do. You have to do a little work, even if you're running a by the book module. Even if you're running like Dragonlance by the book, you've got to do a little work, and you got to do a little, thinking outside the box. You can't.
Yeah.
You can never just. I've never ever, and I would strongly advise anybody, to even a new DM, to never run anything just straight from the book. You got to read it first, read it a second time. If it's been out for a while, Google it, see what everyone else's experiences were with it, because you can find very quickly, like, oh, well, that's dumb. Why would they write that way? Let's rewrite that and make that work. And it's the same thing for just setting up your game, your entire campaign, as far as, there's clearly no halflings in Dragonlance because you have Kender.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
There's no Azamar, there's no tieflings, there's no Goliaths. They don't exist in this world because there's like 76 books written about them, and they didn't appear in any of them. Therefore, they don't exist.
Yeah.
Moving on. I don't care whether you want them to. They don't.
And Ouroboros book, Ouroboros, whatever.
Oh god, why would we ever talk about that disappointment of an awful book?
It was a cool setting. Like, there was some really cool stuff in that.
There were a few cool ideas in it, but overall, I regret that I let Chris talk me into backing that Kickstarter. That money I would have rather spent, because that book is not worth it. That Kickstarter was not worth it, and
I don't even know what you guys are talking about, but it sounds pretty.
There was a
terrible.
Kickstarter. It was written. Was this Mike Morhaime, one of the guys behind Blizzard, that was a big
It
D&D
was
nerd?
no, it was Chris Metzen.
Chris Metzen. He was a big D&D nerd. He was one of the writers behind World of Warcraft and other stuff, but he was also a big D&D nerd. But he created his own homebrew setting and been running it for people at Blizzard and his other friends and stuff, presumably.
And
so
wanted
it got
to share
this
with the world, huh?
He wanted to share it with the world, and he got this whole thing. And I know Chris, when it came out, was freaking jazzed about it. And I bought into the hype, and I was like, okay, this guy seems legit. And he legitimately is a huge D&D nerd and a huge D&D fan. Like, he's not like a fake guy that's just cashing in on his Blizzard fame. Like, he's a real D&D nerd.
Sure.
But his stuff reads like, just your buddy down the street's homebrew stuff. It is not professional in any level. The stuff is not balanced. It's not even particularly well written for a lot of the
So basically,
mechanical.
it's like he was doing it. He was night owling that shit. Didn't have anybody edit it, and just said, "You know what? This looks good."
No, he started his own company.
He started his
Chief Gaming, and it just didn't. It didn't come to fruition.
It didn't produce good results. Like, the stuff was like, it's not terrible, but it's not good either. It's just, it reminded me of like stuff that I would do and reject for things I would want to put out for like even the homebrew like options I put out for like my last game. It was like the cutting room floor of that. And I just it was so niche and so, I don't know. It was very disappointing for somebody of his hype and stuff. And I'm sure for like your own homebrew table, totally fine for him playing with his friends and doing his thing. For a product that raised, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of dollars it raised, it did not meet the standards that I would have had for that kind of cash infused into producing a professional product.
What I wanted to get to about it was that.
Oh,
no.
Are you still talking?
I'm too angry and grumpy about it.
What I was going to mention about it was
man be grumpy
because they used the ORD 5.1 on it. They had to include all the races that were not in his setting, so like Tiefling and Dragonborn and whatnot. And so there's like this little blurb with like it's like, well, I think I remember Dragonborn is like, yeah, there's a Masonic like temple out in the middle of the mountains that has the last remaining Dragonborn that have ever existed in this setting, and they don't ever leave. And if one does leave, it'll get killed instantly. And I'm like, okay, well, that's one way to make sure players don't play that race.
You don't have to include those. Just because you're using them doesn't mean you have to use them. It just allows you to use those in your product. You by no means are forced to include everything from the SRDs and whatnot. Like, it just says, hey, these are available for use in your own things.
Yep.
There was no reason he had to include any of that.
All right, so let's talk about something. We started to talk about it. I guess we're playing Overwatch the other night or whatever it was, about running a Hex map campaign.
Yes, I'll give you the recap on that one.
Okay.
I am thinking of running a monthly game with some just older people.
Oh my god, I hate you.
Yeah, this was when we tried to like volunteer our services on account of being elderly adventurers, and you're like, no, I only play it locally in my game store in Charleston. Like,
So what I wanted to do is play Shadow Dark and have a giant paper map with just full of empty hexes. Draw the original opening hex, which is like a city or town, and then randomly generate at the table all what's in like the surrounding hexes as they go out and explore, and then randomly roll the dungeons and the monsters and everything there, and let the players go through that setting that way. So that was the initial idea, and go. Tell me why I'm wrong.
I'm not even going to say you're wrong.
Okay,
there are a lot of different ways you can run a Hex Grid. That is one of them. That is probably the most difficult way to do it, and you're not going to have the greatest adventures doing it that way because you're randomly generating everything as you go. So there's nothing sort of pre-built or pre-planned. It's just, here, let's roll some dice, see what's in this hex. You can absolutely
make the Excel sheet to do it.
Yeah, but you can absolutely do that. It's just, you're sort of flying by the seat of your pants that way. The way that I've always seen them done is you'll start in one hex, and you might have a few locations that you would know about already, just a handful of them that are nearby that you can go and explore. And that works pretty easily because you, as the DM, can already have those locations planned out, written up. Okay, you're going to go do the the mines. Let's, here's the maps for that and everything. It's already done. And at the same time, as you go through, people can wander around. Every hex they go through could potentially have a random encounter of some sort, and that's what the tables that exist are for. And then there's also the rumors that you would pick up as you're, playing. I know, like with the Shadow Dark, what are the Cursed Scrolls? Like they're sort of designed that way. You have 20 different locations that are already on the map, and you probably wouldn't want to show that map to the players initially. Maybe give them a blank map, and as they go out, you can start filling in these locations. But you, as the DM, know what's at all of those spots already. So it makes it a lot easier to run because you know what's there. Like you have things already planned, or at least an idea.
So one of the ways I have seen this done is kind of a combination of those. Is like you have the map, and you could show either one of two ways. You can either show the whole map to the players, and by that I don't mean like every single thing that's in the map that the DM would know about, but like if there's a major city like in the center of the thing, and then there's other settlements, like you probably know like where all the other settlements in the region are, because that's not like a secret that, hey, there's a village like a few miles to the south, and there's another village over to the west, and there's this castle that this knight lives in over the north. Like those are not secretive things. Those are things like, yeah, there's a world where trade happens, the roads go to these villages in these ways. So like those are the places, and you might know like, hey, there's a mine over there, and there's a weird tower that a wizard used to live in over that way. And then you have your rumors, things of like, we heard there's a dragon somewhere around here, or there's an ogre in a cave somewhere, and things. The DM knows where everything is, but the players know like the things that the people living in the area would know. Like, hey, I know like there's farmer Ted lives down to the south, and he brings his things here, every Friday. The kind of the other way is there's like almost like a fog of war. Like the local area around where you're at. And then as you explore further out, you expand the map. You learn about what's in the hexes, and then the hexes like bordering where you explore to, you start to get a little bit of an idea of what's there.
That's kind of what I remember. Was it Tomb of Annihilation, I think?
Yeah.
Where you're in Chult. Like I remember, I only got to play a few games of that, but we were running around in a Hex Grid, and we didn't know where anything was. We knew something to the south. We need to go that way.
So yeah, with Tomb of Annihilation, the DM has two maps. They have Chult blank, and they have Chult with all the locations. And essentially, you're sent out to find all the temples of the gods that existed in Chult and retrieve items from them, so you can then locate the Tomb of Annihilation and then eventually stop Sararak. And so, in between the major locations is basically a hex crawl through the jungle of Chult, where you fight pygmy dwarfs and Tyrannosaurus Rexes
and fucking gargoyles at level 2.
And some dinosaur race. Let's not forget the dinosaur racing.
Yep.
The dinosaur racing. Yep. Chult was one of the ones I actually really wanted to play through like that initially, and I may still do it, but
don't do it.
You'll do it.
What was the hag's name? I don't remember. She had a great name though.
I don't remember any hag.
Yeah, there was a hag. I'll find out what it was.
Yeah, so I like personally, I like the way of like, because it makes sense to me that like even if you start in a particular city, like the world's not a vacuum. Like you probably know that there's unless you're in a weird situation, but you probably know where like at least the general direction of where a couple other like regional settlements are, and like major points of interest. Like, hey, everybody likes to hike up, Kennesaw Mountain. Like, so you go hike up there, and like that kind of stuff is stuff that like there's no reason for that to be a mystery. Like in a real world scenario, like clearly you're going like there's more than one city in the world, and people trade between the villages where the farming happens and the city where industry happens. And they probably know a few like crazy old wizard on the mountain, or there's a real famous druids grove somewhere, or like the date night spot in the grove over there by the waterfall, like that kind of stuff. Like even my daughter, who doesn't drive and stuff, like knows generally speaking, like, oh, my friends are this way, and like the mall is that way, and like you have a general sense of the world in some respects, at least locally.
Oh, by the way, the hag's name was Nanny Poo Poo.
I'm looking through the book right now. I don't see a Nanny Poo Poo.
Yeah. Nanny Poo Poo. I remember it now.
Yep. Nanny Poo Poo. He's right. I'm looking on 5e tools right now. Tomb of Annihilation, page 72.
Not supposed to mention that.
I just remember when I played it, we were the last thing that I remember was that we were trying to go find Nanny Poo Poo.
Nanny Poo Poo.
Ghost of Saltmarsh was not great, but I'm glad I didn't run Tomb of Annihilation.
It could have been fine. It could have been fine.
I would have just had to lean into the dumb and be like, dinosaur racing is cool.
All right, boys, let's race dinosaurs.
Everybody get real into it. I don't know why, but get real into it. Also, everybody's get a dinosaur mount at some point. You're riding pterodactyls. Yeah, and I don't know why Asarak is in this, because this seems beneath him.
Yeah. Whatever.
No, I love it. I wish I'd actually got to play through the rest of it, but I never did even know about the dinosaur racing until tonight.
I did not like the Tomb of Annihilation. I did prefer the second ed module of Return to the Tomb of Horrors, which is much better outing for Asarak and his brood.
I'm assuming you love the Tomb of Refurbishment too, right?
Tomb of Refurbishment?
Yeah, that was Chris's module.
When I took the when me and Jay bought the Tomb of Annihilation and we revamped it, called it the Tomb of Refurbishment.
Yeah, the Grumpy Dungeon Master is
right now on DM's Guild.
Yeah. Check it out.
I have not checked that one out yet.
You'll love it.
So when I got to looking for Hex Grid things that I owned, one of the modules I pulled out was the Duchy of 10. It's an old Blackmore adventure for basic. It's like Mystara. But I got to flipping through there, and there's a whole section on monsters and foes. And one of the things I came across is called a Gakarak. I had never even heard of this one, but apparently it's just an 18-foot tall treant that's blackened and covered in moss and lichens and fucking hates humanoids.
Hell yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, my Tomb of Refurbishment has been downloaded 1,500 times.
Oh wow.
Nice.
It is for free, so like anyone can get it for free. But yeah,
Still,
that is the right price. So I'll check it out.
Yeah, that is the right price. Yeah, this whole Gakarak thing, like, it could be interesting. They tend to control entire forests that they just keep all humanoids out of. Like, they can control all plants within like 360 yards of them, so they just make travel almost impossible through there. And they can actually animate trees and plants within 90 feet of them. But anyway, since I haven't looked up any ecologies this week, so you get the Gakarak instead.
That's your one weekly thing, man. That's your thing now. You have to do that.
That's your
look.
one
The Internet Archives is having issues right now. It's hard to look at them.
See,
no.
I want the ecology of a green hag named Nanny Poo Poo.
Well, no, you can have the ecology of the Gakarak.
All right, what happened?
No, what I tried to look up, and it couldn't be due to the Internet Archive issues, was the ecology of the Bag of Devouring.
How the fuck do they breed? I want to know this.
Well,
It's very
ecology's got it
important.
covered.
Yeah. Oh my god, is that actually a
That
an
is
article?
actually an article
Oh
from
my
Dragon
God.
Magazine, The Ecology of the Bag of Devouring. I think it's 271.
Of the bag of devouring. Yeah, let's see.
Because it's a creature.
So, bag of devouring. Feeding behavior. The primary functioning of the bag is to devour anything placed fully inside it, with a particular preference for living creatures, which are completely consumed and destroyed. Extradimensional creatures. This bag is considered a feeding orifice for a large, unseen creature residing on another plane of existence, which is responsible for the devouring process. Has selective consumption. While the bag can technically hold non-living objects, it may periodically expel them or even swallow them whole, transporting them to another plane. Reaching inside the bag can be extremely risky, as there is a chance the creature within will pull the individual inside and consume them. The bag of devouring in a campaign world would significantly disrupt the local ecosystem, particularly if it's used to prey on animals or even people, creating a zone of depletion around its location.
What are you reading from, Chris?
Google.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's Dragon Magazine 271.
Okay, I was right.
But yeah, you are correct. Internet Archives is down, and
Yep.
An Archive, which also has a lot of Dragon magazines, doesn't have that issue. So yeah, maybe next week.
Be a source of unexplained disappearances of creatures in a region with only rumors or strange stories circulating about its existence. The presence of a bag of devouring could lead to interactions with other creatures that might draw it to a food source or as a threat, creating interesting dynamics within the game world. Players might face moral dilemmas when encountering a bag of devouring, considering the potential consequences of using it to disposal of unwanted creatures. All right.
All right then.
Yeah.
So
didn't tell me how it fucks though.
Yeah, I need to know how this thing breeds.
Oh crap!
How do you make
I used
more
to have
bag of
that one.
devourings?
I wish I've lost so many of my Dragon magazines in a college move. I'm holding in my hands number 270 right here. So close.
You're off by one.
Like a giant PDF archive of the Dragon magazines?
Yes, there is, but it's down right now.
Oh. Like
that's what
Internet Archive had a bunch of them on there, and that's where I had gotten a bunch of the previous ones, and it was not available.
Yep. Anyway, so I had seen a thing in DM's resources fairly recently that I was very curious of everybody else's thoughts on this. And I kind of know, I'm fairly sure I know what you guys are going to say, but I just wanted to get feedback. So they were asking why people run modules instead of homebrewing, and the general consensus was that it's just faster and easier. And I saw that, and I wholly disagree with that. Modules, the few that I have ever run, are fucking time consuming because, as Dan mentioned earlier, you have to read the book, then you have to read the book again, then you have to make all the changes that you think need to be made. Whereas if I'm making a homebrew, I don't have to read anything. I can just make it happen. You know, it doesn't take me any time. And once I've got my campaign idea set, I can make an adventure in 20 minutes. It takes me very, very little time to actually put something together that I can run for my players. But if I'm running a module, I have to read the section on what I'm about to do. I have to remember it. I have to then make notes so I don't forget key important things, which if it's a homebrew, I rarely have to do that because it's all in my head. I already know most of it. Yeah, go ahead.
I think a lot depends on the quality of the module. And my limited experience has been 4th edition and 5th edition modules.
But you've run a lot of modules where I have not.
Of modules. So in 4th edition, the modules were presented differently. Something I really wish I would go back to. We've talked about it a lot on here, where basically there is a booklet, like a little pamphlet that you buy, like those old like folder keeper things, and inside there are maps and a small booklet that has the level ranges for that, adventure you're running. So the first one in the 4th edition is Fall of Fallcrest or something like that. It's about the town of Fallcrest and the Points of Light campaign setting, and dealing with a cult of Orcus that is trying to take up place there. And it gives you the town, all the NPCs, everything. It's very similar to like how the Phandelver starter set adventure is run. Again, a really good one where you don't have to. I don't think you have to do a lot of prep work for that, but it's small and it's contained.
Right.
And the thing with the 4th edition one, which they kind of did with the Phandelver one again, is that they had some other modules that basically built up eventually to this massive conclusion where you fought Orcus. And you had to buy the mini, and then the mini had the book inside and the map inside and all that shit.
Yeah. First, second, and third edition modules were 50 pages. Like they were short.
So, like Phandelver's kind of the same way. It's levels 1 through 5. All the NPCs are there. You don't have to worry about anything that's happening in Waterdeep or the Sword Coast, you know. And then even the expansion stuff, like the Essentials kit, just expands upon what's already there and helps you grow out things a little bit differently. And they provide more NPCs if you ever want to go back to Neverwinter or if you want to go down to Waterdeep. Whereas when I run Waterdeep, I have to do extensive research on Waterdeep, and that's a personal preference of mine. You can run Dragon Heist start to finish, but there are logistical problems, there are lore problems. The latest video, or second latest video now, of Ed Greenwood's video series is about those problems, lore-wise.
Yeah, the one where he's correcting people.
Do you own the 2nd edition box set, City of Splendors?
No.
I wish.
You should. It is the Waterdeep box set, and it gives you everything you need for Waterdeep.
I bought Volo's Guide to Waterdeep, and I read through it, and it was amazing because it's just about him talking about all the bars and areas, and that's all it is. And like, there's like a death threat range on it. So like, you know, but there's a lot of work to Waterdeep. I have to figure it out. I had to spend a lot of time not homebrewing, but checking my facts, getting everything set up, figuring things out.
I will say this, because I do the same thing, Waples. You actually don't need to spend that much time homebrewing and checking your facts and making sure everything.
I do.
Your T's are crossed and your I's are dotted. And the reason is that your PCs will never know.
My PCs will never know.
You can make it up on the spot. And even if they think they know because they saw it in a video game or they read a Drift Stewart book, or they are actually even have the Forgotten Realms Wikipedia page up in the on their other screen, it doesn't matter. It's your game.
Yeah, no,
absolutely doesn't matter.
I totally get that.
But I'm the same way. I mean, I will, for the most part, I will try to think about the things that the PCs will most likely get into and where they're going to go, and try to at least look up, skim some material for where they're going to go if I'm playing in a world that allows me to do so. And the Forgotten Realms Wikipedia is great for that, because even in the middle of the game, I will pull that shit up and be like, skim. This seems important. I recognize that name from my 30-something years of gaming in Forgotten Realms. I'll pull this in. And sometimes the dates don't line up, and that doesn't matter.
No.
Like, I'm not running the MCU here. It doesn't matter.
No, but what I was going to go to though was, and something this is something me and you have run and Jay has run. You look at Icewind Dale and the Rime of the Frost Maiden, and just how discombobulated that is. And that wasn't because of the writers. It was more, I think, due to how they hired all these different writers to write different segments, and then they try to like make it all work together. And there were some editing problems and stuff like that. So like, we had to do so much work to get that module to work.
Except for me, because I specifically ran it the way it was.
Yeah, but like the dog sledding, like the issues with the Shardalian dragon, how you're supposed to get back to it in time before it destroys all the.
You're not.
Like, you're supposed to. You were supposed to get a bunch of undead.
Not the way it's written. You absolutely are not supposed to get back in time.
Not the way it was written, but there was cut content because the original plan is that stupid necromancer chick that you meet up after you go through Sunlight was supposed to give you a set of undead sled dogs.
It's not
That
cut
could-
content. That's literally in the book still.
No, the undead sled
I don't
dogs are
remember
not in
that.
the book.
That
They
is
are not
absolutely in the book, man.
No, it was published on DM's Guild afterwards. It's not in the book.
No, it's not. I can pull that shit up right now.
Pull that shit up right now.
Huh,
I will.
interesting.
I'm gonna get you. Hold on.
Undead
I'm
sled dog.
gonna go with Dan here because I'm playing in his game right now where we encounter
Yeah.
those undead
And
sled
I have
dogs.
not touched
And
the
Dan
DM's Guild
does
when it
not
comes to
use the
that.
DM's Guild or D&D
No,
Beyond.
that was
Yeah.
something we found, Dan. I remember us finding that. It wasn't in the book. It was
Hold on.
Well, hey, let him look it up.
Pump your brakes, brother.
While he's looking it up, let me tell you that in general, I agree because my experience running Saltmarsh, I agree in 5th edition. I'll say that because my experience running Saltmarsh was that it was so poorly written and put together, and the stats of D&D monsters are so poorly done
Oh, that's true.
that I have to create custom monsters and custom encounters in order to challenge my players, even when they're not playing like weird multi-class off the wall like super tech combos. They're just playing normal characters, and that I would have had less work just running my own stuff than trying to convert their stuff and try to make it make sense and trying to weave it into a cohesive campaign. I had the least work, however, if you were just running it literally by the book. It's no effort because I ran. Now you might not get satisfaction from your PCs because the one module I ran straight by the book, straight like exactly. I did not alter anything. Just this is what the book says happens. Everyone in my game was like, Christian, what the fuck? What did you do this session? Are you okay? Are you sick? Are you just not feeling well? Then I told them, nah, I just ran this one by the book so you would know what is written in the book and how it goes.
So, doing an online search, the dogs are living, but she can turn them into undead.
That's not in the. I'm looking at the book right now. I have
Yeah.
something open.
I don't have it in front of me because I don't give a
I'm
shit
looking
that
at the
much.
book right now too. It's like the way it reads is over the sound of the wind, you hear the barking of dogs getting louder. Through the blowing snow come 3 wooden sleds pulled by canines as big as wolves. The closest driver yells out, "Can we be of service?" And then it goes through the stats, and her Icewind kobolds are undead because she killed those earlier in the module. And it says each sled is pulled by 6 strong dogs. But I will definitely say that I'm looking at my personal notes, and the personal notes say fast-paced back, running dogs ragged, or using Valine's undead dogs.
Yeah, because we found the
Fucking
writer.
necromancer.
We found the writers like, hey, these are the things that
I don't remember us finding any writers about it, but I think it's just common sense. She's a necromancer. You're gonna run the dogs ragged until they fucking die, and she animates them. Done.
Yeah, and that's just the way we're wired from running old school D&D. You did not have to spell out that the dogs.
No,
it was just this person is a necromancer. She's trying to move you fast. What's the effective way to do that? You don't need to write it out. Clearly, they're undead.
Yeah, I made a shorthand note of it saying 8.5 hours to get back if she's running with undead dogs.
Yeah, because without the undead sled dogs, you can't make it back to like the main town in time, or one of the towns in time to catch.
Yeah, because you have this stupid thing where it's like you have to take a short rest after 3 hours or roll for exhaustion, like 6 times or something like that. It's like, guys, you didn't actually make like that. I mean, one of my biggest complaints about Icewind Dale, a frozen tundra-based, survival mystery affair for the first couple of chapters, and like there's no survival based anything. It's like, hey, you guys bought cold weather outfits in the first town, cool, don't worry about it from here on out. That's it.
Never need to think about it again.
Minus 50 degrees and the goddess of winter is just flying around and making it even colder. Don't worry about it.
Doesn't matter. I went to REI and bought a coat.
Yeah, you guys got mummy sleep sacks. You're good. Like buy the book stuff on it. I'm like, you guys couldn't come up with anything, really? I used some third party stuff for the first couple of chapters, and eventually I was like, okay, we're getting towards the last couple of chapters. I don't really feel like dealing with this anymore. They're level 12 at this point, I don't really care.
No,
And neither did they. But like for the first couple of chapters, it made sense that you have to like do survival based things, and like the scary thing is the cold, not so much the monsters you got to go beat up.
No,
But
it was fun because it made decisions challenging. Of like, we would have to think about as players, where do we want to go? What's the logistics of getting there? Can we survive to get to that point that far in terms of like the cold and the food that it takes? Like, is that reasonable for us to do? That made it feel really cool. Like, it felt like an old school game because you did those things. So I loved it.
Yeah, and that definitely goes back to, I guess, like Jay's original point here of, do you spend more time working on adapting a by the book game? Yes, I do. Jay, you, if you actually did it, would.
Yeah.
I know Waples does, and I know Christian does too. But that's not your average DM. Your average DM, and also, correct me if I'm wrong here, Waples, if you're running Rime of the Frost Maiden for Adventurers Guild, you have to run it by the book, don't you?
So that was back when they had a team writing for Adventures Guild. So there's a separate adventure that they wrote for Frostmaiden when it came out. You can still run it by the book if you choose to, but they have a separate adventure that kind of takes place in there at the same time that runs parallel to the book, which is designed more for 2 to 4 hour sessions.
Right, sure.
But you have to run it by whatever they wrote, right? Like,
Yeah,
you're
but
running by the book.
But that is then written for, okay, like I remember the first one really well. You are traveling up there to drop off supplies. The rime hits. There's a landslide. You break free. You fight an owlbear at level 1. Your party TPKs. You run the first adventure again. One survives this time. Why did it get an owlbear at level 1? I don't know.
I don't know, but it sounds like time.
But you got to run it by the book, so that's what you get.
Yeah, they said like it's an owlbear, but they gave it like brown bear stats, and then like whatever that black substance was, I can't remember the name of it, as claws. So it's an owlbear, but with brown bear stats.
Oh, with Shardelian, yeah, Shardelian claws, yeah.
It still killed everybody because there's also a pit with 100 crawling hands down at the bottom. It wants to push people into the pit.
Oh, jeez.
So that's what I did, and I killed 8 players, I think, in total. Man,
yeah,
in that pit, because the bear is also smart, super smart too, and it can just.
It's just trying to throw people in there with the crawling claws.
That's why I am looking forward to Planescape. I am not running anything by the book. I'm going to take a few inspiration from some 2nd edition modules, but I'm not running anything 5th edition. I'm running my own stuff, and it'll be, especially because I am using Mike Shea, Sly Flourish's kind of lazy DM prep ideas of how to prep stuff.
And that's why I'm having a great time too with Waterdeep. Like, I really liked that chapter at the end of the Waterdeep book. That's Volo's guide, like shorthand guide to like Waterdeep and what goes on there. And so while that book is like 3 chapters and you're done with the adventure, and then there's a chapter for each of the major villains, if you ever want to do that. And the last part of the book, and I've got the table of contents right here. Yeah, it's Volo's, Waterdeep, and Kyridian, where he tells you all about like what goes on, the wards, the parties, the holidays. And I really use that section more than anything else in this book to kind of like, oh, hey, there's a holiday where the city guard decides to go outside of Waterdeep and round up all the bandits and bad creatures that surround the area on like a fucking 4-day bender. And I had my Zentarum wait for that event to happen, and then took over the city and killed all the guards. Because they're all out there doing this bender, killing boar and shit outside of Waterdeep. So they took over Waterdeep for it. Like, I used the holiday to the advantage. So, like...
Yeah, you got creative. You made your own stuff. You didn't run the module as it's intended. So
I mean,
but
the module is intended to give you a necklace of fireballs at level 2.
well, yeah. Point is, if you're running modules, it sounds like you have to do a lot of work just to run modules. So
Well, my point was, it really depends on the module.
Look up City of Splendors 2E and also Waterdeep in the North. Those are 2 AD&D books focused on Waterdeep. They're also really good. They have lots of maps and lots of cool stuff.
And honestly, the Ed Greenwood stuff for Waterdeep that he's been talking about has been probably some of the best stuff too.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
Like I said, I mentioned this last podcast, I believe, where we were watching the fashion episode. He's like, okay, this is the fashion in 1390 AD.
Yeah.
Here's the fashion now in 1490 AD, turning the century, and then like these are the men dress. Like, it's so weird.
Yeah, like that is a level of detail that I am just never going to put pen to paper and write down for my campaigns. It's just never
he
gonna
took
happen.
a very, like, that is his world, the same way that like Middle Earth was for Tolkien, in the way that he creates that sort of detailed background. And I think he's even said this, that a lot of it was really like all of this details and stuff was just for him initially when he was running it, so he would have an idea of when he's talking to his players, like what he would want to describe or how things would go. And it was really just all background information so that he could be a good storyteller in his own world.
Yeah.
It was never really meant to be like this big published thing where all these details would be out. It was just like, this is an easy way because I put all this stuff out there and I do this for my own edification, for my own creative output. This is a way for me to know when my players ask a question, I've thought of that, or I've thought of something along those lines, and I can throw stuff out there as details when I'm giving a description of an NPC from a place.
Yeah,
Yep.
and like I have my own homebrew setting that I've been thinking about putting pen to paper on, and I've been thinking of ideas and adding to the story and changing ideas and stuff like that. And that was always a thing, like, you know, the dress and how they act, but it was really just divided up by kind of like the locations of the different races, you know.
Species.
Not well, in my book, it's races still.
We're old.
You're on 5R now, man. You're already running the stuff.
Ancestries. So the different ancestries in my my campaign, like they all look different. Like, you know, they're like the merchant guild looks more like your average trader would look like, and the highborn elf area looks like highborn elves. But like that's as far as I ever put that kind of thought to it. But then after watching some of Ed Greenwood's videos, they're like, I got to put so much more thought into this, you know. But like a lot of that comes down to, again, what I mentioned last podcast is like when I'm giving direction to artists on how I want to see these guys drawn up.
That's important.
If everyone in the merchant guild is always wearing let's say a turban and a vest with pantaloons, and they're all wearing high boots, like that is the style everyone has, that has to be a direction I have to give to an artist.
Yeah, so an artist, everyone in this guild always wears a members only jacket.
Yeah. Yeah, the Duragard that I have in my campaign all have leather jackets. All have Lettermans. So so homebrew to me is definitely going to be much more work. But really, when it comes down to the campaign, it really depends on the campaign. Like, there's a couple that I can point to and say, run the Fandelver one first, because everything you need is there. Don't change anything. It flows real well, and it works. But avoid Frosthaven, or Frosthaven. Avoid Icewind Dale and Rime of the Frostmaiden, because you have to figure out how everything works together, and there's a lot of piecing together. But when you get that story working, it's going to be great, you know. Oh, it was another one that I ran.
Avoid running Ghost of the Salt Marsh as a campaign.
Yeah.
Do run Ghost of the Salt Marsh as picking any one of the adventures in it, running it as a one-shot.
Yep. Kind of covered that last week.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, I haven't run Ravenloft, but like that looks like one that has a lot of things already set up with it. Like, I know there's a lot of work.
I feel like Dan did a whole lot of work when he ran that for our group.
Yes, I know he did, and I know I would too. But I think that there's a lot in there from the parse readings that I've done where, like, you don't have to, but the more effort you put into it, the more better. The more better it's going to be.
From everything I see, that is the best module, probably book that 5th edition put out is the Ravenloft Curse of Strahd.
Good, because
Baldur's
that's what I'm
Gate,
playing in.
the Descent from Avernus was once you got to Avernus. Before you got to Avernus, it was great. And then there's like the getting to Avernus part that's really wonky, and then after Avernus is great. They either run the first part or run the second part. That's like separate campaigns.
I avoided that one because I feel like I'd be real judgmental about it.
The fact that it had Mad Max in hell, I was out.
Yeah, I'm out.
Yeah.
I have strong opinions about anything the way the plane should be, just because I'm a huge fan of the Planescape thing. So I am very biased towards that 2nd edition Planescape and the way things worked there. Anything that flows counter that is just raises my ire,
Well,
my blood pressure.
we talked to what was his name?
Was it Jeff?
No, not Jeffrey Ludwig.
Oh Lord. Give me a minute. I can go through all the podcasts.
One of the original guys that worked on Planescape.
Yeah, no, it wasn't.
No, not.
Also, as a note, get Wolfgang Barr on the podcast.
Well, give me his email.
James Hake.
Yeah, James Hake. We talked to
yeah.
James Hake about that because he worked on Descent to Avernus, and the Avernus Descent and everything forward was pretty well done, and it's pretty well straightforward. That's the Mad Max and Hell thing. And I mean, that was used pretty heavily. It's pretty well established in lore now. Thank you, Baldur's Gate 3. But what he was brought into was kind of like to shoehorn in the Baldur's Gate aspect to a book that just took place in Avernus. And I really like the Dead 3 temple. I really like going to the Van Thumper mansion and doing all the stuff there in Avernus, in Descent to Avernus. But it's Baldur's Gate. It has nothing to do with Avernus. It's very separate. So like you can start in Avernus and you'll run a great campaign, or you just run this as a start to shit that happened, and it works good too. Like, so it really depends on the module book.
Yeah.
I agree. I do not like a lot of that stuff, and I'm a big fan of James Hake. I think he's a great guy. I think he's a great writer. I think in general he does good.
And none of it is the writers. I think in a bubble, all the pieces of work that they did are all fantastic. I know what Ashley Ward wrote for Rime of the Frostmaiden. All the giant stuff. All the giant stuff is great, But then when it's just taken and kind of like pushed into like this, circle in a round peg hole,
I would not blame any of them. Like, you're trying to make it as an RPG writer, you're going to take whatever jobs you can get, and
that's exactly what
is paying you money to do whatever. You will do your best to make it work, even if it doesn't make sense, or even if it's not what you would normally do. Take the paycheck, take that Hasbro money all the way to the bank every time. Do it.
I would do it in a heartbeat too. But like I said, because like she was hired to do this stuff, she wrote the stuff. It's fantastic stuff, but it's again a square peg in a round hole. But the eds got shaved off, so it didn't kind of like
we've kind of discussed before.
Sense.
I think what you're saying here is that designing by committee never works.
Yeah.
And that's just the major problem. And my problem is with WotC is that they still haven't fucking gotten that after 10 years.
Well,
of 5e, they still haven't gotten it.
Look at a lot of the old,
is,
like 1st edition and 2nd edition modules that are like, hey, these are written by like 2 to 4 people, but they all worked on the whole thing.
So it's like a small team or even one guy. And I think the reason why Curse of Strahd is probably the most successful because Chris Perkins is like 2 people writing it. That's it.
So 4.5R and all the stuff coming out in 2024, they pulled all their development in-house. And yes, I know they fired everybody, but they're not hiring outside resources to write the modules and stuff. Chris Perkins took everything back in-house. Not Chris Perkins, but he's leading the teams now to kind of do that, at least for the first couple of books. So I expect the first couple of books that come out for 2024 to be really good. And then we'll see.
I hope so. I like Chris Perkins. I think he's a stand-up guy, even if he's held hostage by WotC.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I feel like
Hasbro.
down to the back of the guy's head and like, I've got a really great job here and I don't want to lose it.
I make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year.
I don't blame
and-
you. You
Yeah.
get paid well to produce D&D, which is a thing he's clearly very passionate about, even if he probably hates all the corporate nonsense that goes along with it. And it pays for his family and them to live well. By all means, man, do what you got to do. I will not fire shots at any of the people that try to work at D&D and try to do the thing that they're passionate about.
I mean, look at Jeff Kaplan in Overwatch, where you create something and you try so hard to keep the politics of something out of it, but eventually just the weight of it breaks.
I got more on that later
Uh-oh.
tonight.
Oh no. Oh no.
Oh man,
no.
but yeah. So I was looking at the Duchy of 10 since I mentioned it earlier, and it's literally one writer. It's David J. Ritchie. That's it. I opened it up. There's no other writers in the book. It's just him. And this module's probably 40 pages or so.
Yeah.
Hold on a second. Let me check out Throne of Bloodstone.
So, like,
Two guys, Douglas Niles and Michael Dobson.
Yeah.
so,
I
like,
mean,
if I-
for as batshit crazy, heavy metal, whatever it is, like you can tell it's just one or two guys writing this thing. It is not a whole bunch of people throwing in their 2 cents. There's nothing corporate about this. And I will say, Jay, you commented on, a first and second edition D&D module was only maybe 40 pages long for the most part.
Yeah.
A bigger one, maybe 92, which is what Throne of Bloodstone.
Yeah, I've got a couple, like Scourge of the Slave Lords is like 100 or so.
I will say that part of the reason why is that there was less art, and most of the art was at the back of it because you could pull it out as like handouts, which was I always really enjoyed. There was always a map, or several maps,
Or maps.
yeah, and but most of it was just text, and it was just kind of in I guess what is it, like a publisher format for like a newspaper. So you'd have like 3 columns of text, and it was very limited in what they would say, and like it would give you maybe 1 sentence of description. I don't know if I prefer that more, but versus like a Brim of the Frostmaiden thing where you have like 365 pages with a bunch of new magic items in the background, and every page has art in it.
I prefer the less. I prefer the older ones, the less structured ones, because I don't. The newer stuff is so structured that if you miss something, it can ruin the entire encounter easily. The old ones, it's just a bunch of text that you can just read through. You get the gist of it, and if you miss something, whatever, it didn't affect anything.
I think you're right, Jay. I think there was a lot more free form, there's a lot more option of how you wanted to tackle it. There was a scenario, there was a thing that was happening, and there was a lot more of like, well, what do your players want to do about the thing once they're made aware of it and thrown into the situation?
Yep.
One of my favorite old like 2E modules was Night Below.
I played that for like 3 years during high school.
Yeah, I ran that in high school a couple of times for players in our quote unquote chess club, which was really D&D club, at least for my group of friends.
I recall. Yep.
Yeah,
That's where I played Dark Sun.
Yeah, and it's a great module written by few few people.
It's an Underdark module.
It is, but you don't know that going into it.
Yeah. Other than looking at the cover art, but
Yeah. But it was a great module, and but it kind of lays out like there's a thing that's happened. Your pieces are thrown into a situation. Then there's like, all right, you're in this town. You've made of this kind of general situation, and it's like, all right, go talk to the people and figure out which way you want to go, what you want to do. And eventually, like, depending on, like, it has different, like, it literally lays out, like, well, if they go here, they can find out stuff. And if they go confront this thing, they might talk to this person and find out this. There's multiple ways of getting at the main, like, where you're supposed to go. It's not just like, well, there's only this one guy and you have to go this way.
It's not Final Fantasy. It's not linear, which is what a lot of the new stuff is from what I've seen.
Yes, it is much less railroady and much more like it gives the players options of there's multiple things you can go investigate, and those investigations can lead you to different pieces of information, and all of those pieces of information will eventually kind of lead you in the direction, but they give you different options about how do you want to go about it and which way do you want to approach it. Like you have kind of the freedom, and it makes your players feel like they're really choosing what do you want to do.
Yep. All right.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any other last minute things to chat about?
I could go on this topic for a while, but I'm going to save it for next podcast because I want to talk about how I would craft my homebrew world and take this discussion to the next level.
Oh, okay. Well, we can definitely
but I might
do
not
that.
be here because I may have the LARP. So we'll see.
Well, no, we'll be here. We'll just probably record on a different day because we're both going to be at the LARP. So.
Oh, that's true. Anyways.
All right. Well,
thanks for
listening. Thanks for joining us, Dan, Christian, as usual.
All right. Have a good night.
Yeah. Happy to be here.